Okay, the next thing I would like to talk about is this idea of analyzing, evaluating, and synthesizing your information. So, as you guys start developing your topics and as you start doing research and collecting data for your annotated bibliography, it is very important that you are able to analyze, evaluate, and synthesize that information. Now, when we think of analyzing something, we want to think that you are breaking something apart. So one way to analyze something is to read your article or read your article or book, or this also works with your textbook, and break down what's happening in each section of that article. So say for example, you have an article with 50 paragraphs, and in paragraph 23, you find a sentence that stands out to you. Copy that sentence down and then analyze that sentence. Break it apart. Break that passage apart. What's going on here? What are some of the main ideas that are happening in this particular passage? How do some of the main ideas in this passage support the central main idea of this overall article? These are a couple of questions that you can ask yourself in regards to breaking down particular passages within the article or analyze or breaking down the article itself. When you're breaking down the article and the information that's in it, you are analyzing it. Evaluating is extremely important as well because in terms of writing this paper, in terms of doing this annotated bibliography and using this information from the annotated bibliography to write your final researched argument, you are going to have to evaluate that information. So when you evaluate that information, you want to ask yourself things like, how does this information relate to the development of my project? So for example, you might find an article with a wealth of information related to your topic, but it really doesn't run along the same lines of what you're getting ready to argue in your final paper. You want to be able to evaluate an article and look at how an article is written, look at things like the rhetorical situation, and look at all those things and look at how that might relate to what it is that you're writing because you have to make an evaluation on how you're using your sources. You don't want to just haphazardly throw sources in your paper and just kind of just pull out quotes just because you have to have passages and you have to have quotes in your final researched argument. Rather, you want to be able to effectively evaluate the information that you're reading and be able to show and illustrate how that directly relates to your position or the support of your position in your researched argument. Finally, when we synthesize something, we are basically using that information to support our argument. So now that I've broken down this information and now that I've evaluated this information, now the next step is to use that information to work for me. As we write our research argument essay, I'm going to talk about different ways in which you can synthesize information. For example, you might be able to use a collection of authors who agree with you on the subject to help further your thesis statement. You also might be able to use a group of authors who disagree with what you're saying to also help reestablish your argument. There are certain rhetorical moves and strategies that we can use to help synthesize our information to help support our thesis statement. So when we think about this process, you want to think about analyzing, evaluating, and synthesizing. Because when you analyze something, you're breaking down that information. To evaluate it is to judge that information and to judge how relatable this information is going to be for you in the development of your paper. And finally, synthesize that information is actually using that information to support your actual thesis statement. And all of this stuff in regards to actively reading, actively writing, and responding to what it is that you're reading and writing will act as a simultaneous process as we are developing our annotated bibliographies and our researched argument essays. As we move on to the annotated bibliography, I basically do the annotated bibliography or I assign the annotated bibliography as a stepping stone to the researched argument essay. So the annotated bibliography is a good way for students to organize their source material. Here you will create basically a works cited page and explain each of your sources. In the annotated bibliography assignment sheet, which I provided for you in this week's email, it'll go into detail on what an annotated bibliography is and what it is I'm exactly looking for in your annotated bibliography for the following week. I wanted you all to also be aware, and I just wanted to make a brief correction. Your annotated bibliography is not due the following week, rather it is due on July 27th. So this week, you will be responsible for the readings in the textbook. Also, you'll be responsible for reviewing the annotated bibliography assignment sheet, reviewing the sample annotated bibliographies. But I also want you guys to focus on developing your research topics and finding sources for your actual annotated bibliographies and research argument essays. So in regards to points this week, you all are only going to be responsible for 2 points, which is a posting on the Cypher's Facebook page. The annotated bibliography will actually be due July 27th. So according to the actual assignment sheet, I will expect you all for between now and the 27th to really put together to collect a lot of sources around your topics. So the first step is basically developing your topic. So again, pay close attention to the readings in the textbook this week in regards to developing topics and brainstorming about those topics. And I'll be sure to put some materials on the Cypher's Facebook page in regards to rhetorical situation, rhetorical strategies, analyzing, evaluating, and synthesizing, developing our topics, and writing the annotated bibliographies. As always, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Again, the best way to contact me is through email. Until then, I look forward to reading what you come up with on Cypher's webpage. Again, I encourage you to keep this conversation about the metamorphosis going, and I will see you in cyberspace.